Gautam Adani has always been in the news, not just for his companies, but also for being on that big billionaires rich list. So I want to show you where things are at and how dramatically things have changed in the last few days since the Hindenburg research report came out. Just take a look. From being ranked as the third richest man in the world on the 23rd of January, on the Forbes billionaire list. This was a day before the Hindenburg report was released. Gautam Adani fell to number 16 on February the 2nd. Net worth down 49% from $126.4 billion to $64.6 billion. And today, Gautam Adani has slid further down to number 17 with a net worth of $61.9 billion. Siddharth Zarabi continues to be with us. Udayan Mukherjee, global business editor, also with us. Udayan, very quick first question to you. Investors have been in a flurry. They've been in a tizzy, not really knowing where to get accurate information. As we know, the Business Today team has been leading coverage. Everyone's been watching us. What would you say to investors at this volatile time?
Rahul, it's a falling knife at this point in time. It's very difficult to advise going out and catching a falling knife because you just don't know where the dust will settle with this one. If I were being honest with you, I would have said that this last 30-35% of the fall of the last couple of days, I frankly didn't see it coming. I thought that a lot of the damage was done in the first 2 or 3 days and maybe nerves would begin to settle. But I think there is more smoke, more fire behind this smoke, and which is why this issue is refusing to die down, and therefore it would be very, very improper of me to go out and advise people to go out and buy stocks. But having said that, I would suggest one thing, that you look at Adani Group companies as not one homogeneous entity. I'll give you an example. You can look at Adani Enterprises, which is facing the biggest amount of wrath. It's in the Nifty and it's going down at the average of 20% a day. Now, that probably will bear the biggest brunt in case there is a liquidity issue with the Adani Group. There is none today, to be sure, but if there were to be, then I think Adani Enterprises is the one that is clearly, as you can see in the stock prices, falling the hardest. But they also own Ambuja, and Ambuja till a few months ago had nothing to do with Adani. Ambuja is a world-class cement asset which is falling because the ownership lies with Adani right now. It has strong cash flows, doesn't have any great debt on its book which it cannot service from its cash flows, and it is falling because of the sentimental linkage with the Adani Group. So if you want to cherry pick assets because they have fallen in the last few days, then consider the ones which are falling only because of an umbilical cord of sentiment with the Adani Group, but not because a drying up of Adani Group liquidity actually affects their operations in a single way. This is again no recommendation to go out and buy Ambuja at all, far from it. But I think that probably makes more sense, or even an Adani Ports, than to look at something like an Adani Enterprises at this point in time. But again, no recommendation at all.
Okay. Udayan, thank you very much for that, for that update and your advice. I understand that at a volatile time, it's difficult to, make any specific pieces of advice at this time, but we appreciate that nonetheless. Thank you very much, Udayan, for joining us. Siddharth, we've been saying, what next for Adani in our coverage here on India Today? Because, that reflects the kind of uncertainty about the road ahead. But the question that I'd like to ask you now is, how does the company plan to take things ahead now? We've seen that sort of emotional statement coming out from Gautam Adani yesterday. We've had all the big news breaks by you and your team on this big story. What's the next week going to look like?
The withdrawal of the FPO marked a complete turning point. Remember, this was a journey that had begun some months ago, and now Mr. Adani has very clearly said, I am cutting my losses, at least of my investors, and has taken a stand which I am yet to see anyone criticize that, because there was no floor for the share and therefore it was technically the absolutely correct thing to do. What happens from here on? Very quickly, there is one issue that the group will have to work with, and Udayan made this point that all of us are looking at the Adani Group as one singular entity. Technically and from an investment point of view, and even practically speaking, that's not the right strategy. Each of these businesses are in different sort of verticals. When we were talking about the FPO withdrawal late at night, At that point, I just told you, Shiv, if you recall,
Yeah.
that the Bombay airport, for example, or the Mumbai electricity business that they have, these are running businesses. Apart from ports, just as an example, nothing has transpired there which is changing the business fundamentals. But stock prices do not equal assets. Therefore, the one big thing that I'm awaiting from the group in the days and weeks ahead will be, how does it restore credibility in the international financial markets, which are so important for long-term fundraising and the image and sort of credit worthiness image that is required. I think that is the area where a lot of work needs to be done. Domestic institutions are yet to sort of say anything negative about it. No rating reversals have happened. Our banks have, like SBI, have spoken out. So the bigger challenge is in the international markets, because a conglomerate like Adani cannot only remain tied to India's financial market ship.
We're going to look at that very, very closely. Things are changing rapidly. Looking forward to the next week as well. And I can guarantee you all the big updates and news breaks will be first here on India Today. Thanks very much, Siddharth, for joining us with those updates and those words.